Hey nerdy knitters, we've been looking at triangle shawls in these past few videos, and in this video I'm going to share 10 patterns for bottom-up triangle shawls. Now if you're wondering what a bottom-up triangle shawl is, it's a triangle shawl, but you start at the bottom, at that point with just a few stitches, and you cast on and then you work increases along each edge until you are at the full width of your shawl. You can work increases on just the right side rows or the right side and the wrong side rows, and that will change the depth of the shawl. Like this shawl I have here, I worked increases at both edges, so it creates a shallow triangle that's quite wide. I modified a pattern in this book, Knit Shawls and Wraps in 1 Week. If you like shawls, this is a great book to have. There's lots of good ideas in there. If you want to know more about the construction of bottom-up triangle shawls, I'm going to link a video at the end so you can learn more about that. But in this video, we're going to focus on 10 pattern ideas. If you really like that construction method for triangle shawls, just working a few stitches and increasing along the edges, then you'll want to give some of these patterns a try. Now I've taken these 10 patterns and divided them into 2 groups. The first 5 follow the basic construction more or less. The first 3 do, and then the 2 after that add a little interest. But then the 5 that I'll share later on take this idea of construction for the bottom-up shawl and change it to make it more varied and add a little more interest to the shape. And you can find all of these patterns on Lovecrafts. I looked through there and I found my favorite recommendations for bottom-up shawls. So let's start with the first 3 basic ones. The first one is the carry shawl. This one is worked in a simple garter stitch, and it uses increases at the beginning of each row, and it adds some tassels for a little interest. So if you're just starting with this idea of a bottom-up shawl and you want to just work a basic one, this is the one for you. Now if you like the idea of garter stitch but want something with a little more interest, then check out I Smell Snow by Melody Hoffman. It's still worked in garter stitch, but this one adds some eyelets in there for a bit of variety. Now if you want to skip the garter stitch and go to something a little more interesting, then take a look at this shawl by Cheryl Faust. It's worked in a textural slip stitch pattern, and it has a picot bind off for a nice little finishing touch. Now Nengu by Melanie Berg is also garter stitch with some bands of eyelet rows in there. But the rate of increasing is changed, so it creates an asymmetrical triangle instead of a more symmetrical one. Now the next one is called Heartbreak. This one uses short rows. You're still going to get the bottom-up symmetrical triangle, but she uses short rows in this pattern with the contrasting colors to create more interesting shapes within the basic triangle. Before we get to the next 5 patterns, if you know of a bottom-up triangle shawl, leave a comment telling us about it. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe if you like to get nerdy with your knitting. Now these next 5 shawls take that basic construction method of bottom up with increases along the edges, and it changes it a little for a little more variation. This first one, Fabergé, has a lot going on. There's a ruffled edge, there's a slip stitch pattern, and there's also some beads worked into that, and then there's a decorative eyelet pattern above that. Now the interesting thing about this pattern is instead of starting with just a few stitches, you're going to start by casting on all of the stitches and decreasing along that center spine. But that's a very pretty pattern. I really like that one. Next is the Keeper by Kristen Finley. Now this one starts with a lace edging and uses single side decreases and a center double decrease to create the triangle shape. And then it's grafted at the top to join the right and the left sides with the garter stitch band. So if you're looking for something with an interesting construction, that might be a good choice for you. And if you like brioche, then you'll want to check out this next shawl, Donita by Leslie Robinson. This is a 2-color brioche shawl worked from bottom up with increases along the edges. And this one is simple to modify. You can add or omit pattern repeats. And if you have like a variegated yarn you're not quite sure what to do with, pair it with a solid color and work a brioche pattern, and that will help break up any color pooling and really enhance those beautiful colors in the yarn. If cables are more your thing, you'll want to take a look at this pattern. The Arrow pattern, it uses a cable and lace panel at the center with garter stitch along the sides. It starts with an I-cord cast on and uses increases at each edge and also an I-cord edge, and uses short rows to elongate the 2 wings of the triangle. Now, if you're looking for a pattern with a really different construction, take a look at this one, Duro by Lucy Haig. You work the border first. It's worked in a series of pieces, and then you pick up stitches along the inside of the border to work the shawl body. It's worked up towards the neck using decreases to create the shape and finished with an I-cord along the top. There we have it. Those are 10 ideas if you want to give bottom-up triangle shawls a try. All of these are really fun looking patterns that you could try. And if you have one that I haven't mentioned here, be sure to leave a comment down below telling us about it. And if you like to get nerdy with your knitting, be sure to subscribe.